The first thing I felt was the cold. Not the kind of cold you get from a drafty window or an overzealous air conditioner, but the kind that made your bones whisper, "Buddy, we don't belong here." I tried to sit up, failed. Tried again with the determination of someone whose bladder had been holding an intergalactic council meeting. My limbs were jelly. My mouth was the Sahara. My brain was still trying to download what the hell had happened. Then came the lights, soft, pulsing, blue and green like bioluminescent jellyfish had decided to open a nightclub. The ceiling above me shimmered with moving hexagons, shifting and spinning slowly, like someone had programmed a Rubik's Cube to do interpretive dance. The air tasted faintly of citrus and regret. I moved my arm. That's when I saw it. Symbols. Glowing, alien, uninvited symbols. Crawling lazily over my skin in luminous arcs and jagged loops. It was like I'd been tattooed by a drunken calligraphy droid. They weren't on my skin. They were in it. Moving. Pulsing. "Great," I croaked. I joined a space cult and didn't even get the robe. A hiss interrupted my existential spiral. Not the kind from a snake. This was a door hiss, the sci-fi kind that meant something important was about to happen. I turned my head, slowly because apparently I'd been operating under a 15% battery saver mode, and saw her. She was tall, graceful, pale violet skin, luminous eyes and hair that shimmered like melted mercury. She looked like someone had crossed a goddess with an AI, rendering software that cared deeply about cheekbones. She stepped into the room and stopped cold when she saw me. Her eyes widened and she muttered something in a language that sounded like wind chimes arguing. Then in perfect English, flawless but oddly formal, she said, "The change has begun." Now, I'd heard dramatic lines in my life. I once had a dentist tell me I had structural betrayal in my molars. But this was next level ominous. "Hi," I said. "Quick question. Is the change something I need antibiotics for?" She didn't smile, but her expression softened, like maybe I was less a threat and more a surprise. Like finding a snake in your fridge, but it's wearing a tiny hat. "I am Jirai," she said, "envoy of the outer clans. You have awakened." "I feel very awake," I said, trying to sit again. "Where am I? And can I get some pants that don't ride up my—" "You are aboard the vessel, Senvra's mind. You were recovered near the Terran wastes." There was a light, a rift. I blinked. The last thing I remembered was being in Nevada. Something had fallen from the sky. I'd gone to look. And then, poof, alien spa day. Jirai moved closer and examined the markings on my arm with a mix of reverence and horror. She didn't touch them, but I saw her hand twitch once, like the urge was there. "These glyphs are older than the Union," she whispered. "They should not exist. They were believed lost when the Rift Wars ended." "Well," I said, "congratulations. You found them. Do I win a prize or just horrifying mutations?" Jirai turned her gaze to my eyes. "You are not merely human anymore." "Okay, but am I still allowed to eat pizza and cry during old dog movies? Because those are deal breakers." Again, no smile, but this time she tilted her head, curious, appraising. She called out something in her language, and a panel slid open behind her. A floating cube, roughly the size of a toaster, zipped in with a mechanical whir. Its outer shell flickered with shifting colors. "Hello," it chirped. "I am Moth, cognitive unit and reluctant babysitter." Jirai ignored it. "We must monitor the changes," she said. "If the mythogen has truly awakened, your presence here may alter the path of the galaxy." "Wow," I said, "and I didn't even brush my teeth today." Moth hovered closer. "Based on bioscan readings, you are undergoing molecular rewriting on a subquantum level. Also, you are dehydrated and smell faintly of corn chips." "Perfect," I muttered. "Can we add ego erosion to the symptom list?" Jirai turned to leave. "Rest. Your body will not be yours for much longer." Which is exactly the sort of thing you want to hear from a tall alien woman while you're half naked on a spaceship covered in moving tattoos. As the door hissed shut, Moth hovered closer. "Don't worry, statistically, only 19% of hosts experience catastrophic cellular detonation." I groaned. You're joking, right? Moth blinked. Yes, it's actually 21. I woke up to the sound of someone humming, not a melody, more like a mix between dial-up internet and Gregorian chanting. It took a moment to realize it was coming from the cube. Moth, hovering at eye level and spinning slowly, like a bored disco ball. Good morning, Subject 113, Theta B. Did your existential dread refresh overnight? I'm not a morning person, I muttered. You're not a person, Moth replied cheerfully. Not entirely anyway. I sat up, rubbing my temples. The marks were still there, dancing lightly across my arms like glow-in-the-dark ants doing interpretive yoga. They didn't hurt, but they itched in a metaphysical way, like my molecules were whispering secrets behind my back. Where's Jirai? I asked. She is currently communing with the Pathseers to determine whether you are a herald, an anomaly, or a clerical error. Comforting. A panel hissed open, and Jirai entered without fanfare, carrying a translucent tray filled with what I assumed was breakfast. Either that or it was a modern art installation made of edible mistakes. You must eat, she said. I eyed the contents, something gelatinous, something vaguely twig-like, in a small blue cube that pulsed when I looked at it. I think my stomach just filed a formal protest, I said, picking up the least offensive blob. Jirai didn't laugh. She did, however, blink in a way that suggested amusement. I was learning to spot the micro-humors in her expression, like alien Morse code for, "You're not entirely intolerable." She sat across from me. The glyphs have stabilized during your rest cycle. That is unexpected. I've always been an overachiever, I said around a mouthful of chewy blue sadness. We believe your body is acting as a conduit, not merely altered but restructured. It may be that the Mythogen lattice recognized something in you. Probably my sparkling personality, I said, or my irrational fear of wasps. Jirai tilted her head. You fear small flying stingers? Who doesn't? I have personally dismantled a living asteroid. Your wasps sound inconvenient. We both paused as Moth made a noise that sounded suspiciously like a snort. I swallowed and leaned forward. So what does that make me exactly? An alien science experiment? A prophecy in bad shoes? Jirai's eyes narrowed, not with hostility, but with something closer to concern. You are a deviation, a human with embedded code that should not exist, a sequence from before recorded lineage. You are not meant to be possible. Well, I said, I did once eat 6 burritos in under 10 minutes, so I've always defied biology. That one got her, a small twitch at the corner of her mouth, a genuine Jirai micro-smile. She stood and gestured for me to follow. Come, there is someone you must meet. We exited the chamber and entered a corridor that looked like the inside of a living creature. Pulsing walls, gentle hums, occasional organic sighs. I tried not to imagine we were walking through a giant space whale's intestine. We passed a window and I stopped. Outside, space stretched in colors I didn't know how to name. Violet winds, golden mist, a sun that pulsed like a heartbeat. You said we're not near Earth, I said. Jirai didn't stop walking. Correct. The Senvra's mind orbits the Iraq cloud, 400 parsecs from your planet. I'm just going to pretend I know what a parsec is and not cry. Wise. We entered a chamber filled with floating screens and crystalline structures. In the center, seated in a hovering chair and wrapped in the silver threads, was something, or someone, ancient. Not old like your grandpa. Old like, I remember when atoms were still a rumor. This is Valen, Jirai said. A lorekeeper. He will examine the glyphs. Valen turned his gaze on me, and I suddenly felt like my bones were being fact-checked. He spoke in a voice that sounded like echo and rainfall. You carry the lattice, and yet you smell of earth. Curious, impossibly unpleasant. Thanks, I said. It's probably the space jello. He reached out a trembling finger. I tried not to flinch. The glyphs on my arms lit up the moment he touched me. The room dimmed. Every crystal shivered. Valen pulled back, staring. He is not the key, he said, but the gate itself. I blinked. Okay, but like, what kind of gate? A front yard one or? Moth beeped. Probability of universe-altering significance just jumped to 89%. Also, your blood pressure is doing something interesting. Jirai looked at me, no longer with analysis, but with something else. Apprehension, awe, maybe a little hope. Whatever you are, she said softly, you're not done becoming it. I sighed. Can we at least agree I get a cape when this is over? Nobody laughed, but I could have sworn the walls of the ship exhaled, like even they were trying not to panic. The glyphs had started migrating, not in a subtle way either, like a slow tattoo creep or a cute animated doodle on my skin. No, these things had a destination. They moved like they were late to an important cosmic board meeting. One spiral-shaped marking had journeyed from my left shoulder to my right thigh sometime during the night, and I was pretty sure another one winked at me when I scratched my knee. You're being recompiled, Moss said cheerfully as I tried to keep my breakfast down. That word doesn't belong in a sentence about my body, I replied, watching my forearm as the symbols rearranged themselves into what vaguely resembled a QR code for a forbidden sandwich. Jirai stood nearby, arms crossed, her gaze focused and unreadable. Either she was impressed, deeply concerned, or trying not to laugh at my morning hair. This is a rapid evolution, she said. Too rapid. I've always been an overachiever, I said. Got a participation trophy in kindergarten for excellent glue stick discipline. She raised an eyebrow. Or maybe that was just her version of blinking in disbelief. It was still hard to tell. We walked together through the corridor toward the med lab. Moth floating between us, narrating my biometric data like a hyped-up sports commentator. Heart rate, elevated but not catastrophic. Cortisol levels, mildly panicked. Humor output, 71% sarcastic. Do I get a punch card for every scan? I asked. Like 10 checkups and I get a free smoothie? Jirai remained silent, though I noticed the corners of her mouth twitch. Progress. Inside the med lab, alien tech buzzed and hummed. Several lavender-skinned researchers stood behind glowing partitions, poking at consoles and whispering in a language that sounded like crystal chimes being stirred in syrup. One of them, a short, square-faced technician named Oral, approached me cautiously with a scanning wand the size of a gardening hoe. Hold still, Taryn. This may tingle. I've heard that before, I muttered. It usually ends with a tetanus shot and mild regret. The wand passed over my chest and the lights dimmed. Oh dear, Oral said. He's beginning to resonate. That sounds musical? Resonance at that frequency is typically found in sentient weaponry, Jirai offered. Cool, I said. So I'm possibly a flute of mass destruction? Oral frowned. More like a tuning fork that unlocks forbidden star systems. Much better, I deadpanned. Moth rotated in the air. We need to isolate the mythogen field. If it spreads too far into the cortical cluster, he might start interpreting time sideways. Sideways? Time will feel like soup, Moth clarified. You'll still taste memories, but they'll be out of order. Tuesday might visit you while you're brushing your teeth in last month. Oral jabbed a needle into my arm without warning. I yelped. This stabilizes the lattice, he said. Also contains mild sedatives. Mild? You'll dream of floating cats reciting poetry. Most find it soothing. Jirai helped me up as the world began to wiggle slightly at the edges. We need to talk to the archives, she said. If you're resonating at a gatekeeper's frequency, we must know what you're linked to. Do the archives take walk-ins? I asked, wobbling slightly. Or do I need an appointment and a coupon code? Moth beeped. Archives are only accessible via MindBridge interface. You'll have to sync. Sync? Plug your brain into a memory engine and hope you don't download someone else's trauma playlist, Moth said helpfully. Ah, I muttered. So just like social media. The world pulsed once, just once. But it was enough. The glyphs on my arms glowed bright, then dimmed to a slow rhythm. Jirai met my gaze. They're leading you somewhere. You are not only being changed, you are being summoned. To what? I asked. A galactic intervention? A cosmic karaoke night? But she didn't answer. Not because she didn't want to. Because I was already beginning to see the hallway stretch, twist, speak, and the ship's walls began to whisper my name, backwards in echoes, from outside the hull. The archives didn't have doors. That should have been my first warning. No doors, No visible walls, just a shimmering membrane that pulsed like it was breathing. I stood in front of it, clutching a borrowed robe that smelled faintly of seaweed and whatever passes for drier sheets in deep space. Jirai stood beside me, calm and collected as ever, as if she escorted humans into mysterious memory engines every Tuesday before lunch. Moth hovered behind, making soft beeping noises that I assumed meant, "This is a terrible idea," but could also have been his version of humming. "I'm going to walk through that?" I asked, eyeing the membrane as it rippled in sync with my heartbeat. "You are not walking," Jirai replied. "You are sinking." "Right, because walking is too mainstream." She handed me a small orb, smooth and warm, pulsing with faint green light. "This will anchor your consciousness. If the interface tries to overwrite your identity, focus on the orb's hum." Sounds reassuring. "And if it doesn't hum, then scream." Ah, Plan B, classic. Before I could offer a counter-proposal, like running, I was nudged gently forward. The membrane accepted me like a polite ghost, cool, silent, slightly ticklish. I emerged on the other side into a space that didn't seem to follow normal geometry. Floors folded upward, ceilings flowed sideways. There were shapes that shouldn't exist and sounds I could almost see. Moss' voice rang in my head. "Welcome to the Infinite Index. Try not to lick anything." I took a cautious step, orb clutched tight in my hand. The glyphs on my arms began to glow brighter, as if they recognized the place. I didn't, though something about the ambient hum made my teeth itch. The room responded. Columns of memory, glowing, floating, rotating slabs, materialized in front of me. Each one flickered with images. Some I recognized, Earth cities, oceans, a puppy wearing glasses. Others were stranger. Galaxies forming in reverse. Starships made of bone. One that was just a sandwich, but the sandwich looked back. I reached for a column. It pulled away. "Okay, fine, I didn't ask nicely," I muttered. "Hello, glowing cube of weirdness. May I browse your cosmic secrets?" It lowered gently into my hand. Inside I saw myself, but not me. Another version, eyes silver, voice echoing across dimensions. He stood at a gateway surrounded by beings made of thread and flame. He opened his arms. Light spilled out. Darkness recoiled. The cube vanished. "Oh," I said, that's probably not great." More columns floated in. One showed a war. No, a collapse. Gates shattering. Voices screaming in languages I felt more than heard. A symbol flared again and again, the same as the one on my spine. Another cube flickered to life, this time showing a council. Aliens I hadn't seen before, arguing in a circular chamber. At the center was a projection of Earth. One of them pointed to it and shouted. I turned to leave. The membrane appeared again. Convenient. Back on the ship, I stumbled out and nearly fell. Jirai caught me. "You were in for longer than expected," she said, her voice steady but her eyes scanning me like I might be leaking metaphors. "I saw stuff," I said, still slightly dizzy. "Versions of me. Gates, sandwiches." "You accessed past and potential futures," she replied. "The archives tested your resonance. What did you feel?" "Pressure. Like I'm a soda can being shaken by destiny." Moth beeped. "That's an excellent metaphor. I'm saving it to your profile." Jirai led me back to the med chamber where Oral was waiting with 2 more needles. "You again?" I asked. He nodded. "You smell like index static. This will neutralize the worst side effects." "Will I stop hearing colors?" "Hopefully, unless they're helpful." Jirai watched as the glyphs pulsed once, then settled into a new configuration. "You've begun syncing with something," she said. "Something old." "Cool," I said. "Does that come with a loyalty program? Points? Perks?" Moth floated lower. "Yes, early access to ancient prophecies and existential dread. Also a commemorative mug." I nodded, groaning as the needle stung. "Great. Wake me if I start glowing in Morse code." Jirai placed a hand lightly on my shoulder. "We need to prepare. The archive didn't just show you something, it marked you. You are now part of the signal." "That sounds ominous," I said. "It is," she replied. "But don't worry. Because you'll protect me. No, she said, because the galaxy's chaos will find you with or without my help. The ship had a garden, not the kind with tomatoes and gnomes. This one had floating vines, bioluminescent fruit, and a flower that sneezed when I got too close. Jirai insisted I spend time there to stabilize my inner vibrations. I suggested pizza instead, but apparently galactic alignment outranked melted cheese. I was sitting on a root that gently pulsed with life beneath me, possibly judging me, when Moth appeared above my head and said, "Your biorhythms are currently swinging between mild anxiety and existential noodles." "That's just how I always feel around plants," I replied. "They're silent. They plot." Jirai appeared from the far end of the garden, holding something that looked like a cross between a fruit and a crystal egg. "Eat," she said, handing it to me. I thought I was supposed to stabilize my vibrations, not hallucinate in high definition. It's called Vereshka. It strengthens neural conductivity and encourages memory retention. Also improves digestion. Well, at least one of those things sounds safe. I bit into it. It tasted like citrus had a polite conversation with cinnamon, and they agreed not to fight. Jirai sat beside me, folding her legs with the kind of grace that made me painfully aware I was still wearing someone else's borrowed tunic that barely fit. "You saw too much too quickly in the archives," she said. "Yeah, I noticed," I replied. "My dreams now come with a narrator and a mild warning label." She studied the markings on my arm, which had stopped glowing and now just shimmered faintly, like they were napping. "The glyphs are adjusting to you, merging more deeply. Soon they'll stop being foreign. They'll feel like thought." "That's great," I muttered, because my thoughts weren't weird enough already. She didn't laugh, but her gaze softened. A small pause hung between us, filled only by the faint buzzing of a floating pollen spreader that looked like a bee made of chrome and anxiety. "I know you didn't ask for this," she said. "I didn't even ask for directions that day," I replied. One moment I was chasing falling sky debris like an idiot. The next, boom, sci-fi makeover. Jirai looked away, fingers tracing the bark of the root beneath us. When I was young, my sister touched a glyph shard left behind after the final gate collapse. It burned into her skin. She didn't survive it. My next joke died in my throat. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. "She wasn't chosen. The symbols rejected her. Violently." She paused. "But they chose you." I didn't know how to respond to that, so I went with the obvious. "Maybe they were just desperate." Moth buzzed in from above. "Apologies for the interruption, but we've detected a signal. It matches the mythogen frequency." Jirai stood immediately. "From where?" Moth rotated once. "The Keltron Rift, unclaimed territory, notably unstable. Also mildly haunted." I blinked. "Haunted?" "In a science-y way," Moth assured. "Echoes of fragmented consciousness, quantum bleed-through, that sort of thing." "So, space ghosts, got it." Jirai turned to me. "We need to go there. If the rift's emitting the same frequency, it may be another piece of the lattice. Or a warning." "Or both," I muttered. "Do I get a helmet for this part?" "You get a seatbelt," Moth said, "and possibly snacks." We made our way to the bridge where the view of the stars stretched so far, it made my brain want to file for early retirement. Jirai stood at the helm, issuing instructions in her crisp, commanding tone, while Moth grumbled about trajectory optimization and unwarranted enthusiasm for rift travel. I strapped into my seat, the glyphs beginning to stir again, like they sensed what was coming. "Here we go," I said. "Into haunted space, can't wait." Moth dimmed the cabin lights. "Remember, if you start hearing voices that sound like your childhood fears, let me know. That's usually a bad sign." The ship jumped, reality bent, and my arm began to hum. The Keltron Rift looked like someone had taken a black hole, a lightning storm, and a pile of bad decisions, and mashed them into a spatial blender. The ship's shields buzzed constantly, like they were muttering expletives in binary. "This place feels like it wants to eat us," I said, watching the swirling mass of colorless light through the viewport. Jirai didn't respond. She stood at the controls, spine straight, eyes locked on a rotating cluster of coordinates only she seemed to understand. "Technically," Moth chimed in, "this sector has attempted to consume over 75 exploratory vessels. Only one sent back anything remotely hopeful. What was it? I asked. An image of Toast, screaming. Of course it was. We drifted closer to the source of the signal, threading our way through gravitational eddies that tried to fold the ship like origami. The markings on my skin pulsed harder the deeper we went, sometimes in rhythm with the rift's pulses, sometimes in direct rebellion. I tried to ignore the increasingly musical itching in my left knee. Jirai turned toward me, her expression unreadable. You're reacting faster than I expected. Are you in pain? I've had worse. Once got a paper cut from a tortilla, I said, gripping the armrest as the ship rocked again. But if my spleen starts speaking in Morse code, we're turning around. The signal grew stronger. Moth displayed its waveform, erratic, jagged, almost angry. It's broadcasting something, he said. Old tech. Maybe older than the glyphs. The ship descended into a debris field. Broken hulls, shattered satellites, the occasional rogue sandwich wrapper drifting by like some interstellar guilt. Jirai tapped a console. There, that vessel. Do you see it? I squinted. Amid the wreckage floated a dark sphere, smooth and seamless, except for a single glowing line down its center. Moth beeped uneasily. That is not debris. That's alive. Alive? I repeated. Can we get a second opinion? The signal is emanating from inside. We have to dock. Docking sounds like a strong word. Maybe just hover awkwardly near it. But Jirai was already moving. Minutes later, I was in a pressure suit with a helmet that fogged every time I exhaled, which was often because my anxiety had decided now was a good time to practice deep breathing techniques. You're going in with me, right? I asked, looking to Jirai. She nodded. The vessel responds to you, but you won't be alone. That's exactly what haunted houses say before things go horribly wrong. We floated through the airlock into the sphere. Inside was silence, complete, unnatural silence. Even the static in my thoughts dulled to a hush. The interior was unlike any ship I'd seen. The walls shimmered like dark glass. Lights pulsed beneath our feet. And then a voice, low, layered, and familiar in a way that made my spine twitch. You have come home. I froze. Please tell me nobody else heard that. I heard it, Jirai said, drawing her pulse blade. But it didn't speak in Galactic Standard. It spoke in you. A panel slid open ahead of us. A soft glow spilled out. I stepped forward before I realized I'd made the decision. The chamber was circular, filled with swirling glyphs, like the ones on my skin, but older, larger, tired. In the center hovered a crystal, cracked and humming. As I approached, the glyphs on my arm flared. The crystal brightened. Okay, I said. Either I'm about to unlock ancient wisdom or accidentally activate a death ray. Who's taking bets? Jirai didn't blink. We are past betting. The crystal pulsed again, and an image filled the room. A projection. Me, but not me. Taller, paler, eyes like star fields. The projection looked at me, then nodded. I was the last gate, it said. You are the next. My brain locked up. What? Is this like being promoted or cursed? The projection flickered. The glyphs rewrite, but not who you are, who you become, and you must become closed. The rift opens. Behind me, Jirai whispered, It's trying to warn us. Moth's voice crackled through my comms. The rift's energy just spiked. I'm detecting a surge. Incoming. The image vanished. The glyphs on my body began to sear, brighter than ever. Something was coming through, and I suddenly wasn't sure if I was a key, a door, or the lock itself. The alarms didn't just sound, they sang. Like a terrible off-key opera performed by a choir of disgruntled space crabs. The whole ship vibrated with urgency, lights flashing in frantic Morse code for holy cosmic pancakes, we're doomed. I gripped the armrest so hard my knuckles turned 50 shades of white and blue. The glyphs on my skin pulsed violently, like a heartbeat on steroids. Jirai was already at the helm, fingers dancing over controls faster than I could follow. The rift is tearing open, she said without looking at me. Whatever waits beyond is close. Moth spun overhead, projecting holograms of twisting shadows clawing at the ship's hull. "I recommend panic," he quipped, followed immediately by controlled panic. I swallowed hard. Is there a difference? As far as survival protocols go? Absolutely. Suddenly the air shifted, the kind of shift that makes your teeth chatter and your hair stand on end, even if you don't have much hair to begin with. A ripple ran through the ship, as if reality itself had caught a bad case of hiccups. "Brace yourself," Jirai said. "This is no ordinary breach." I glanced down at my arms. The glyphs flared, sending waves of warmth and electric tingles up my skin. I tried to remember if I'd packed extra underwear. The viewport ahead twisted and shimmered like heat waves over a desert. And then, darkness. Blacker than space, blacker than the void between stars. And from that darkness, shapes emerged. Not solid, not fully formed. More like smoke caught in a gale, swirling with whispers and half-remembered fears. One shadow stretched toward the ship, tendrils like liquid shadow slipping through cracks and crevices. "Okay," I said, voice shaking despite my best efforts. "I think this is where I don't volunteer for hero duties." Jirai ignored me, stepping closer to the front, pulse blade humming softly. "You must hold the gate. Your glyphs are the seal." "Great, so I'm a cosmic post-it note. Do not open, weird stuff inside." Moth beeped anxiously. "If the seal weakens, the rift will consume this vessel. Estimated outcome: 0 survivors, infinite regret." I clenched my fists. "So, no pressure then." The shadows pressed harder, dark tendrils licking at the hull like curious fingers. The glyphs burned hotter, reacting to the intrusion. "Focus on the light within," Jirai instructed, voice steady. "Your energy binds them back." I took a deep breath, deep enough to question if I might accidentally inhale a stray quantum particle, and concentrated on the glow beneath my skin. The warmth spread, pushing outwards, forming a shield of shimmering light that pushed the darkness back an inch, then a foot, then a corridor. "Hey!" I shouted at the shadows. "No trespassing!" One of the tendrils recoiled, then surged again, faster, angrier. The ship trembled under the assault. Suddenly, a crack ran down the viewport. I swear I heard it whisper, "You cannot hold forever." "More pep talks, please," I muttered. "Much appreciated." Jirai's hand found mine, steadying. "You are not alone. We stand with you." Her voice, calm and certain, was like a lifeline in the chaos. Moth zoomed around me, flinging bursts of energy that sizzled and popped. "Initiating countermeasures, deploying nanoshield swarm." Nanites swarmed the tendrils like angry bees, tearing at the shadows, forcing them to retreat. The glyphs on my skin glowed brighter, a symphony of light and energy, sealing the rift like a cosmic band-aid. Slowly the shadows withdrew, dissolving into nothingness. The ship steadied. The alarms dimmed. I sank into my seat, muscles trembling, heart pounding like a bass drum. "Well," I said, voice hoarse, "if this is what becoming a cosmic key feels like, I might ask for a refund." Jirai smiled. Just a flicker, but it was real. "Today, you held the line." I nodded, swallowing back the mix of fear and pride. "And tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," I said, "I hope there's coffee." Moth chimed in. "And donuts." I smiled because maybe, just maybe, the galaxy's weight was a little lighter with friends beside me. The stars outside the viewport blinked quietly, indifferent to the chaos that had just unfolded within the Senvra's mind. I sat in the command chair, the glow from the glyphs on my arms dimming to a soft pulse, like a heartbeat finally learning to slow down. Jirai stood beside me, her usual stoic presence softened by a faint smile that made her look almost human. Almost. "So," I said, cracking my knuckles, old habits die hard, "we survived the rift, sealed the gate, and didn't totally implode. That's progress, right?" "Significant progress," Jirai confirmed. "You have become what the mythogen was always meant to create, a bridge between past and future, chaos and order." I glanced down at my arms. The symbols had settled into an intricate pattern, a map of light and shadow. Not just marks, but a part of me now. woven deep, impossible to separate. Guess I'm officially part alien now. Should I update my resume or just accept it under skills? Jirai chuckled softly. You have grown beyond any known category. Moth zipped into view, humming a jaunty tune that could only be described as space elevator music. Scan complete. Ship system stabilizing. Probability of imminent disasters reduced by 74%. 74? I narrowed my eyes. What happened to the other 26? Unaccounted variables. Also your sarcasm level, Moth answered without missing a beat. I grinned. I try. Days had passed since the rift closed. The ship resumed its steady hum, carrying us forward through the stars. I found myself standing at the observation deck more often, watching the swirling nebulae and distant suns with new eyes. Not just as a human lost in space, but as something else. Something forged by ancient codes and cosmic destinies. Jirai approached, holding 2 cups of something that smelled faintly like roasted roots and caramel. Coffee? She asked, offering me one. I took it gratefully, savoring the warmth. Never thought I'd drink alien coffee and actually enjoy it. She smiled. It is an acquired taste, like your humor. We stood in comfortable silence, the vastness of space stretching out before us, a reminder that the universe was still full of mysteries, challenges, and surprises. Do you think this is over? I asked quietly. Stories like ours never truly end, Jirai replied. They evolve. You have a role now, not just to guard the gates, but to shape what comes after. I took a slow sip, feeling the energy settle in my veins. Guess I better start practicing my cosmic diplomacy. She laughed, a clear, genuine sound that filled the room. And maybe grow that beard you joked about, she added. I shook my head, smiling. One step at a time. As the ship sailed onward, the glyphs on my skin whispered softly, a reminder of the journey, the battles, and the transformations. I was no longer just a man who woke up covered in strange marks. I was a beacon, a living bridge between worlds, past and future intertwined. And whatever came next, I knew I wouldn't face it alone.